Sam,
Fred,
how the hell are you, man?
welcome to Insanity, Fred.
I know. What the hell? This time we got a guess. We actually caught a fish, did we? It's pretty great.
We actually caught a fish.
Put this freaking hook in the water so many times, and now it looks like some silly fish came on.
Yeah, I think we're now 2 for 4. We're at 50-50 right now. So
50-50 is pretty good.
It's a good start. It's one of those starts that requires a few hiccups. It's kind of like when you're starting a boat or something like that. It's like, and it just hasn't started in a while. So it's to be expected.
Yeah, and that's the sea we're talking about when we say, in that boat we put our line in the water and put a little bit of bait on there. The transcendental bait. I think it's transcendental bait we put on there. This idea that maybe we could
bringing in some good metaphors already. I appreciate that.
Yeah, like maybe we could actually take this conversation out into the next multi-dimensional stratosphere. So I think when I threw that out into the ether, Adam Quiney showed up. It's like, well, I hear y'all talking about freaking transcendental. What? That's me. That's me. I'm in.
That's exactly what I said too. I remember specifically saying you're talking about freaking transcendental.
I know. When I said freaking, I thought, well, Adam probably didn't even say freaking, but you might have, because we had this conversation about whether or not we could swear, and I'm not the first guy to throw out the word fuck ever, so I'm not going to do it now either. That's up to you guys to toss
I have to admit, I'm a little bit on edge because Adam just updated his haircut to a really, really, really good style.
Yeah, I know, right?
Up until now, I felt like I could kind of compete. I watch Adam on a regular basis on his Facebook feeds, and I thought, you know what, I can compete with that level of handsome. But he just upped the ante, so I'm a little bit on edge about this.
Well, his level of handsomeness is unquestionably at least intimidating, if not, striking at the very least, and intimidating very likely for those of us who maybe don't traffic in that level of attraction. You know what I mean? Like not every one of us. Let's just take a moment.
Let's just take a moment to just appreciate those clear blue eyes. That's like a blue sky on a cloudless Hawaiian day.
Now we're talking, Sam.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
That's good shit right there.
Penetrating too.
That's
penetrating.
Good shit. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys, stop.
Yeah. No, that stuff that could actually make it into the actual cut. Because most of the shit's going to be edited out already because we haven't said shit yet. But I think we should splice this one in. That's beautiful. That Hawaiian night, blue eye, all that. Yum. Freaking awesome, man.
Oh yeah.
This is the hook. Yeah. This is what grabs people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And you should know because actually you're the first fish, the second fish to narrow right onto that hook, to just to bite it like that. So welcome to
didn't even hesitate.
No, not even. Welcome to Insanity, Adam Quiney. Tell us, let's go. What the hell's going on with you? Why do we even know you, and why the hell do we care anything about what you have to say?
Such an aggressive way to invite me to share about myself.
I could dial it down. Then who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? Is
So we know each other. I think it was Ryan that put us in touch originally, Sam, who is a mutual friend of ours who said, you guys just must know each other. So Sam and I connected, and then instantly we're like, we definitely should know each other. Mm-hmm. And then Sam invited me into the group we're all a part of called Metal. Mm-hmm. And that's where you and I met, Fred. And you and I met because you were, I'm going to turn a fan on. Let me know if it starts to make noise in the mic. It shouldn't be an issue. You and I, Fred, got into connection because you were doing the crazy thing that transformational people tend to do, which is invite people into a conversation where they would just be listened to, which is a weird thing no one does anywhere else. And I was like, this man is doing weird stuff. Like I enjoy doing weird stuff with people, and we should know each other.
That's
and
right.
So that began how we know each other.
So why?
Do you want me to now talk about why people?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. There you go. Rock it.
That's very
Why
very
does anyone
polite of
not want to
people
listen?
to actually be invited into a conversation. People just usually reach out to me and have those conversations. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't invite you to have this conversation. What the hell are we doing having this conversation? So that's very polite for it to be the other way around. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of a courageous like a courageous thing to say yes to, I thought, because my experience is people were craving being listened to, but we would never ask for that because it's way too vulnerable and intimate. So instead, we just talk a whole bunch, and then people tolerate us until they get to talk a whole bunch, and then it kind of goes back and forth that way. And so for you, Fred, to kind of like put that front and center and make that invitation, I mean, the thing that really intrigued me was I wonder how much people are saying a yes to that, because it takes a special kind of courage to be a yes to that kind of thing.
Well, I did throw the question out to the group. It's like 200 people or so, 200 plus on that feed, and I think only a handful, maybe I threw it out there maybe 5 or 7 times, and I think I got about 5 or 7 people out of 200 to actually decide that was something they wanted to do. And you're right. I think all of us. Isn't it true that all of us want to be all of us want to be heard. All of us want to be listened to. All of us want to be validated or created or at least, gotten at some level. And yet there it was in an open offer, and people tended to shy away.
Well, it's interesting, and I'll pose this question to both of you, but I guess specifically Adam, since we are here technically interviewing Adam, but both of you can answer this. Do you think that has to do with a sort of a cynical viewpoint, a cynical perspective that if that invitation is accepted, that somehow you are being, that there's an attempt to sell you something, that there's something within that they're like, oh no, I know what this is all about. I know it's yeah. It's just a conversation, right? Yeah. Okay. So speak to that. Is there? Do you feel that cynicism is partly why that return on that invitation is so low?
100%. So, in fact, what I would say is it's a microcosm for people's relationship to love as a whole. So I'm going to broaden this out a bit, but like we're trained growing up that love is not really to be trusted because it'll be like people will be clingy about it, or they show you love so that they can get something from you, or love precedes then you getting told how you suck, or like a million different things. And so ultimately what I would say Fred is putting on offer when he puts that forward is the opportunity for someone to be in the experience of love by way of simply being received and listened and witnessed. And I think what we're really seeing is people's undistinguished relationship to love making itself manifest. So they're like, to your point, Sam, they're like, what am I going to have to give this guy? What's going to happen? Or even it might just be like, that's going to be fucking weird. And I don't think this is conscious, but they're like, I don't know how to be around something that's weird like that. So it's easier for me just to not be around it. And then they don't take them up.
Right. So there's a resistance due to the perception that there's going to be an agenda. And a lot of times there frankly is an agenda. I mean, if we
100%.
think about the way in which the modern world works, a lot of these times it truly is a manipulation with an agenda. It's clouded in this, it's sort of sold in this sweet package that's it's all about you and that there's no agenda when there actually is an agenda. And so, how do people differentiate about when there's an agenda and when there's not? Because I think a lot of that reaction or that initial trigger, that resistance is validated by a lot of experiences that people have.
It's a really good question, Sam. I wanted to look at the word agenda in this question. Because so let's say my agenda is to I think that, sell you something, or to sell you a program, or to sell you my coaching, or to sell you something. That would be an obvious agenda. But let's say my agenda was like I guess what I'm looking at is a distinction between agenda and intention. That in fact, when I reach out and I want to hear from you, there is an intention. Even if it's somehow pure, It's the intention to learn what humanity's about, or what you're about, or what, or to offer you something, even an agenda to offer you something that doesn't imply the need for reciprocation. What that's an agenda too. So, or if all of a sudden I want to, maybe I want to, create a relationship with you, or I want to, you could say that I want to go out to dinner, or, create a partnership, or, and if that all happens retroactively, we might say that it was an agenda based first meeting. But is there something inherently wrong with having an agenda? And is agenda different than actual intention?
Adam, go for it.
I was just
Jump
going to
in
say, I have
here.
some thoughts on that. So, bear with me because I'll bring this back. But like one of the places I often see this show up is when I'm supporting new coaches who can't create clients. And the reason they can't create clients, one of them is because they hate selling, which most of us do because selling sucks and all of that stuff. And they're so terrified of giving people the experience of someone being pushy, or of like someone being in the discomfort of, all of the stuff that follows. And so where they get really messed up is, before you can even invite people into any kind of relationship that's paid, you have to create a relationship with them. And before you can do that, you just have to connect with another human being. And where they get messed up is they're like, okay, I'm trying to just connect with a human being, but at the same time, it's true that I'm hoping they'll become a client. And how do I deal with this tension? And what they're creating is like an either or. So they're holding it in their head. It has to be totally separate. I have to just connect with them without any agenda or intention in order to be pure. And I say, like, really what starts to open the door for them is when they realize, oh, it's okay for me to be present and really only focus on connecting with them. And at the same time, let it be true and even known that I'm kind of hoping we do become a client because you're cool and I like what I'm learning about you. And I only connect with people that are interesting to me. And that's the people I end up working with. So it's, for me, the either or is what creates the problem, as opposed to just being able to own the truth of all of it. And then it becomes really simple.
Beautiful. Really well said, Adam. Sam, now I see why we had him on as a guest.
I like that. Yeah, there's a transparency to begin with, that, and that's part of what I hear you saying. And it's like, as long as that transparency, as long as you're showing your cards and saying, look, yeah, this is true, and this is true simultaneously, that transparency can then be honored and respected, instead of that lingering sort of elephant in the room kind of feeling that a lot of people have, that prevents that. That does create that anxiety, that does lead to that, well, there's someone else here too. That's when there's a sense that there's someone else in the room that's not the two of us. There's another person in the room, and that the reason why it feels that way is because there's not complete transparency. And so what I get you're speaking to is just being totally transparent right up front.
Yeah, we can't manipulate, or at least I believe it's really hard to manipulate people. All of that fear, oh, I'm going to trick them or manipulate them, becomes really hard to happen if I'm transparent and upfront. Look, I'm going to tell you this in the hopes that you buy my condo. Okay, the person knows that that's what I'm doing, but I'm not. It's going to be hard to manipulate them. I've told them. I've let them see the cards.
So I like to explore this a little bit more, because I feel like what we're speaking to is really valuable in terms of not only, for you as a coach, but for anyone who's in sales of any form. And basically everyone is selling something, whether or not they're even, considering themselves entrepreneurs or people in sales. It all has to do with being, with having something that you have to share, and then receiving the value for that which you have to share, whatever that is. And so there's this kind of used car salesman type of subconscious resistance.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Can we talk?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I really like this sacred geometry over your right shoulder.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, the Sri Yantra.
Yeah, where did you pick that up?
That came from Etsy.
Oh, cool. I've seen in Rhythmia in Costa Rica, they have a lot of this same. I mean, I think this is a pretty common symbol that people see when they're exploring ayahuasca, but I'm a big fan of that one.
Yeah, it's the Sri Yantra. It's supposed to symbolize the multiple dimensions of human energy in its relationship with the cosmos. Yeah,
I buy it. 1 sec, just going to release this beast. Hey, come on, out this way. Get out.
Our 15-minute break. All right, Sam. I sorry to interrupt.
So here's where Adam is. I want to have Adam have an invitation to speak to something that I think is really important, and that is around how every human being, no matter who they are, is selling something. Yeah. That's just part of being alive. Is we have to offer something in exchange for value in exchange, and so what is it that creates that sort of subconscious resistance where there's an automatic assumption that a lot of people have that what they are being sold is not going to live up to the value of what they would potentially invest in it. There's like an automatic used car salesman kind of response that I think a lot of us experience. Well, when I say a lot of us, I think this is one of the most common things in the world, is for us to have a hypervigilance that is a sort of a dubious disposition around anything that might be sold to us. And yet at the same time, we're buying things all the time. Every day we're buying things. Every day we are buying products and services that are we consider essential to our well-being. And so what is it about that dubious disposition? Where do you think that comes from? And what do you think we need to do to address that? This is just an opportunity for you to coach who's ever listening to this.
Yeah. Well, I'll share my experience rather than coach anyone.
Sure.
But the first thing I would say is, I love that question, by the way, and thanks for the opportunity to speak on it. The first thing I would say is that where that comes from is totally honest, by which I mean we have arrived at our hypervigilance because the whole world, by and large, is constructed and set up towards selling us something. And I would distinguish selling us something from serving us and from enrolling us in something. So when I'm being sold something, people are trying to get me to do what they want me to do. And then usually that will involve the exchange of money or whatever. But to your point, Sam, we could argue that I'm trying to sell you on Adam Quiney in this moment and what Adam Quiney has to say. That could be an example of it. So it doesn't have an exchange of money, but nevertheless, I'm trying to get you to buy into something. So I'm trying to get you to do what I want you to do. And down this, if we start at the top with selling, we can put a whole bunch of ways of being underneath that, like convincing, arguing, debating, bullying, bulldozing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of what we learn growing up from our parents and from our teachers and guardians, which is this person above me in the hierarchy is the person who has the power to let me do something or not. And how do I convince them to let me do what I want to do? So the game becomes about either getting permission or just doing it anyway and getting forgiveness. And then what are the things we have to do to make that happen? And then a conversation that's focused on enrolling someone in something is a conversation where, with their consent, meaning I'm not trying to do this without them saying, I'm being transparent about this. And I'm saying, look, I think that if you come along with me for this ride, there's really something in it for you. And if you're interested, I'd love to explore what that is for you. Here's why I think both of us would benefit from you letting me do X, or you giving me this time off work, or you promoting me to management, or whatever it happens to be. And we're so unused to that conversation because we're so trained in the other side of things. So I have to convince you or get your permission.
Right. In that old paradigm, it seems to me there's always a winner and a loser of some sort.
Yeah, right.
Like if I'm paying the landlord rent, the landlord is somehow winning off of the rent that I'm paying. And I might be benefiting from experiencing a roof over my head, but ultimately the landlord is making more and I am sacrificing something in exchange for having that roof over my head, where they end up in a more powerful position than I do. There's
Yes.
kind of that relationship dynamic playing out. And I really get that what you're speaking to in terms of enrolling. A lot of people don't even have that in their vocabulary. It's like enrolling. Oh, what do you mean? Like enrolling to college, enrolling to, enrolling to what? And so what I hear you speaking to is that there's a new way of using our vocabulary, a new semantic type of discussion that needs to be sort of brought into the light more, so that the semantics behind this type of conversation can be more well understood.
Yeah, the risk, of course, is as soon as we use a word like that, it sounds jargony, and the tension there is to create a distinct concept. We need new language for it, and so we kind of have to almost fabricate or use this new term, because otherwise people would hear like whatever we said and be like, oh, when Adam says X or when Sam says X, he means this. And then they take it and put it back into something they already understand in their life, which is going to be some reiteration of the game they're already playing. So we kind of have to venture into that jargon for that reason.
Fit it into the known context.
One of the things I'm wondering about in this difference, Sam, just given the discussion that we had a couple hours ago, this sort of debt culture, this power gradient that gets served up when there's an exchange of goods for services, or exchange of currency for goods, or exchange of whatever for whatever, two different realms being equated and then like exchanged as a way of evening a score, that ultimately there seems to be a power gradient, so that the landlord is winning. If the landlord is winning by renting me this place, then the contract is inequitable. I mean, the contract is not, it's not built on the nature of two people believing they're getting the best out of the situation. Maybe the best I could.
It's asymmetric.
It's asymmetric. That's right. And so, and then what it creates is that debt culture that we were talking about just moments ago in in our last conversation, like that there's something like I am less than, because that entity over there is winning while I'm losing, while they feed me what I think I need and they get what they want. There's some sort of disequilibrium in that. And what I would say to the word enrolling, with some understanding, I think, of what Adam's speaking to with the new distinctive rhetorical new instinctive rhetorical explanation, is that there's a greater evenness. I offer an opportunity to you that with your consent you see is, wow, you're win. Like we both win. There's not a winner and a loser here. We both win. You're like, really? You're going to rent me this place for $1,700? I'm so in. That's just like the greatest deal ever. Meanwhile, the landlord is winning because his payment is only $1,000, and and it all works out in that way when there's a mutual equivalence. It doesn't feel like you're getting screwed or screwing someone.
This is so like, most of my work is in the realm of leadership as a quality of being as opposed to a hierarchy. And one of the things people don't like about that is when they want to complain about their boss, and that's the reason they can't lead, which is such a great, like we're already bought into that, right? Oh yeah, that sucks. If only not your boss. But that's not at all what we're talking about. And what you're describing, Fred, is exactly the crux of that, which is to really be a leadership, we must lead both those below us and those above us, because it's who we're being. It's not the position. And so part of, and this might get a little tricky, but it's, even though this person's above me in the hierarchy, who I'm being in my relationship with them is of equivalence, because I'm enrolling them in something. I'm saying, look, I want to do this. I know right now you're not necessarily there. Here's why I think it's a good idea. I'd love to talk with you so that we can get on the same page and see something. And that's where people start to like, you really see their leadership take off because they're no longer playing this game of if only not for da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Super well said. Tremendous. So where does that play out in your life outside of coaching? Either of you, you're both just these premier leadership coaches for, really already really strong men. So, people who are already have a life that in most metrics would be considered very successful. And you're both taking these people and moving them up several notches in the world of leadership or self-satisfaction or life satisfaction. Where does this play out in your work? Not only simply to sell them your goods, but then in the work with them. What do you notice? Either or both of you. Adam, since you're the guest, officially.
I get to go first?
Yeah.
Just
please do. Please do. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, so then I'll give you an example in my life, not related to my work, and then I'll give an example of how this shows up in my work. So in my life, you and I have talked about this before, Fred. Like, I'm really good at convincing. I'm a pretty brilliant guy, so I can come up with a really strong argument, and that's why I used to be a lawyer before this work. And so there's like really well-worn territory, a really well-walked path in my life, and just in my neurons to convince people. And when I get frustrated or feel like I'm right, that's what I want to do. And so that shows up often in my relationship with my wife, where we're not on the same page, and I want to bring her this beautifully made flow chart that I've constructed where all of her arguments are accounted for and then proven wrong. And no matter which way you go down the flow chart, it eventually ends up at the place that I'm at. And two things come out of that. One, there's really not any opportunity for relationship. There's opportunity for me to be right and her to acquiesce. And the other thing is that I never get the gift myself of seeing something beyond what I already know and going deeper in partnership with her than I could go in with myself. So that's the first place, is like,
Fred, I don't think you and I know anything about that, right? I don't think you and I have had any kind of experience.
I've read about it in those old books back in the day, but no, Shakespeare wrote shit about that. I don't know. I don't know what
silly guys and their logical arguments trying to prove themselves. I love that. You and I wouldn't have any kind of experience like that. Yeah, the flowchart analogy is great.
That's just awesome.
Yeah. Perfect. Let me just graph it out for you, honey. Yep.
Here's the other one. This will be a little shorter, which is so really at the heart of a conversation that I want to have with someone for enrollment, I have to set aside what I'm right about, which is part of what's in the way for people. Is we're like, I'm right that my boss should give me this promotion, and then we try to bring that energy. And if you feel someone come at you with an energy that is, I'm right about this, the automatic is we dig our heels in and we're like, great, let's scrap. Like, we're going to be in a battle if I don't already agree with you. So with my clients, there's plenty of times where they're going to touch the hot stove. And I'm like, they shouldn't touch the hot stove because I think I know better than their spiritual path. And so much of the opportunity there for me is just to notice like, oh, I've already got the way laid out for them. And there's a part of me that wants them to do what I think is right. And I got to release that, because that's just going to get in the way of them discovering for themselves what is there to be discovered.
Love it. Let me ask you about a couple of terms that I think are sort of hang out in this sort of tentative zone in the coaching world. A couple of which would be alignment and purpose. How do you relate to those terms? There's a lot of semantic kind of communication that gets thrown around and sort of is dogmatized a word? Is that a word? Yes. Dogmatized? That there's sort of a coaching dogma that gets accepted as this sort of, I feel like there is
alignment
a tremendous...
dogmatizes purpose. Alignment dogmatizes purpose.
Absolutely.
You know that. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. There you go. So I am all about, especially as a coach myself, I am all about breaking up a lot of these semantic kind of structures that we create. because I look at some of the ways in which these terms are being thrown around, and I'm like, wow, this is just a new religion of dog shit in the way in which it's often used. And yet there are certain aspects to the way that these terms are being used that also have relevancy too. So there's always, it seems to me, and maybe this is true for anything that fits in within a philosophical or religious or mythological framework, no matter what it is, it seems to me that there's aspects of those types of semantic communications that are relevant and true and legitimate. And then there's aspects that lead us into a dogmatism and kind of a bullshit kind of way of seeing ourselves in the world. So let me just throw that out as an open exploration for you to respond to, Adam.
I love it. Love your way with words too, Sam. Another part of our hook is a new religion of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So the ego's job is going to be to co-opt whatever is currently on the table that would serve us moving forward, and then use it for its own nefarious purposes. And its nefarious purposes are ultimately keep me in the status quo, because that's what's known, that's what's familiar, that's what's safe, and prevents me from dying, metaphorically or literally. So any of these terms, hold on, let me say one more thing about how the ego does its work best, which is the best way the ego can do its work is to take whatever is going to lead to transformation, so to speak, and then use that in a way that kind of sounds like transformation, but actually keeps us rooted in the spot, which is what I'm hearing in your description, Sam, is we can take anything, transformation, alignment, purpose. What are some other ones I've heard lately? Oh, vulnerability. Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
Vulnerability alert.
Yeah.
10 years ago when I was a kid, I got fuck off. You're talking about vulnerability. You're not being vulnerable. And that's the difference, is most of this stuff becomes something people talk about, but or they know about it. They intellectually know about it, or they talk about it.
Yeah.
And there's no edge in that. You can do that for the rest of your life, and it's masturbatory. It feels good.
I like that. I like that term masturbatory to describe it. Yes, that's great. Yeah.
And the thing I want to say is it's not malicious, it's innocently blind. So it's not that these people are like, haha, I'm going to jerk off onto a Facebook meme. It's that we can't see it because that's how our ego is successful. It fools us into buying into it. And then we're like, yeah, I'm really doing the work. And then, but I'm actually staying on the same place, walking on a treadmill, not moving towards what I want.
And I get that what you're speaking to can be anywhere on a spectrum from benign, innocent, sort of a benign, innocent ego response, all the way up to something that's full on weaponized, depending on how it's used. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is, I'll interject here. Cults fascinate me because highly potent leadership and highly potent cultship are very tight. They're very close. And the distinction I notice between the two is that potent leadership it breaks down your existing limiting beliefs so that you can step into your own deeper belief from there. Whereas cultship breaks down your existing limiting beliefs so that the leader's beliefs can be implanted in there. And the difference I notice where one skews into the other is often where the leader stops doing their own work. And that's the point where their ego grabs a hold of it, is like, no, really, you have divine teachings and you need to have sex with your students to convey this to them, and blah, 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 blah. You get the idea.
Sure. You ever considered that path?
I'll tell you, it's funny. And here's the one my ego does, is when I get really scared, it's like, maybe you should just tell people you're a psychic and use your ability to read them that way. And then you could make all the money and be on TV and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. Psychic panty puller. Yes. Yeah. Here, let me really read into you here.
Boy.
Your future is under my duvet.
What is it? When I use the word, I have myself double checking and triple checking what you men are talking about. And, in the world of alignment, or in the world of purpose, like why am like those two words specifically, but there's other nearly synonymous words. There I become like I look good when I'm using those words properly in a context. Like when I'm saying,
Yeah.
let's find your line. Like when I bring those babies out, those are like shiny guns, you know. And if in fact I'm not really pursuing mine, but I've just landed in a place that I can sound and look good by using the words alignment or purpose, then my work has stopped. I've already arrived. I know about alignment and purpose. Dude, that's all I know about. In fact, listen to me. That's all I ever talk about. And in fact, I'm not aligning or making myself purposeful in any real way with respect to looking at the deeper edge of what, Adam, I think you're speaking of when a leader versus a cultist takes an old way of thinking and leaves open the possibility for my new underlying way of thinking to take over. I don't leave that open for me once I decide that I'm a leader who knows how things should go.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I stopped doing my work.
It's a lot more fun too at a certain point to stop doing your work and start having your sex with your students. I mean, let's just admit it. Come on. I mean, what are we all doing this for anyway?
Less confronting.
Right. I mean, come on. If you can just have people pay you and have sex with you and not really have to do your own work, that sounds pretty great.
Sam, we might be shining a little bit of light on why your coaching practice is a little sketchy these days. I maybe we should take some of these things offline, but I'm noticing something in the pattern here that I look, I'm not a doctor or anything, but there is an opportunity to take a look at some of the patterns you're developing here that might shine a light on your purpose as a coach, actually. So we'll get to that another time.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll explore that another time. Yeah.
Can I say something about about alignment before we shift off of that one?
Yeah.
So, but given what I just said, I also want to say like all of these concepts, despite that the ego is going to aim to grab a hold of them, have tremendous value. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of alignment, the real word that captures that is integrity. And where I relate to that from is it means I'm aligned in my thoughts, words, and actions. And when I do that, and when I work to bring myself more into alignment in more areas of my life, I have greater access to my own power, because now I don't have to manage an untruth, a place where I'm out of alignment. And it's just like a punch thrown in karate. If my elbow, wrist, and fist are all aligned with each other, I can bring more power to it. Whereas if they're bent, the system's just not going to work as well. And so I do want to say, like, despite me talking about, the way I'm relating to the falsehood that comes with them, there's tremendous value in them, which is why they get co-opted the way they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the word nefarious that you applied to it earlier. There's like, it's egregious, actually. It's way out there. It's way out there. And I love that it's also just blindness. It's not necessarily intentionally malicious at all. In fact, usually not. It's just a sort of a blind comfort that comes with riding that wave and not doing your own work. Yeah.
Yes.
Adam, how would you say that this relates to the exploration of one's own shadow too?
Well, I would say it's the heart of it. So like the way I experience we evolve is there's the light that we are. Like, for example, the three of us all share a quality I would relate to as brilliance. And what happens if we grow up as brilliance is that in some places, that expression of who we naturally are is going to be just received with love. And we're going to be like, awesome, here, great place to express brilliance. Then in other areas, we're going to get training from the world around us that pushes us to the underexpression or the overexpression of it. So in some places, I show up brilliant and my classmates make fun of me and call me a nerd.
Inflation or deflation.
Exactly. So around those people, and for the rest of my life, people that look like that original training, I dim down my brilliance. And around other people, I might get made fun of or told by my parents that an A is great, but I need to get that A+. And so around future situations in my life that looks like that training, I crank it up to 11. And so I'm redlining myself. It's not that I'm not brilliant, it's that I'm kind of doing brilliance on top of brilliance, which would be like if my dog went out of his way to convince me that he's a dog. It's just weird and unnecessary. So what happens is those two poles are what I call our shadow, and then we create a life rooted in using the strategies of our shadow. So one example of this is that if you ever go and look into often electricians and plumbing, you're going to find a ludicrous amount of brilliant people. There's a ton of brilliant people there, but they've learned to turn down their brilliance because of the training they got. And then they've learned to relate to themselves as their shadow. So you'll talk to them and they're simultaneously frustrated that people don't relate to them as smart as they are. And at the same time, will tell you, I'm just not that smart. I just know how to do certain things. And then they build a whole life on top of the structure. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to stop there.
It's totally insightful. Is there something to do to heal or cure that with the embedded electrician or plumber or whatever other, similar strata we're talking about here? These folks who are dumbing themselves down or, disempowering themselves through their own self-rhetoric. Is there an opportunity to enlighten, if you will, and I mean that more lighten, even more than enlighten, like lighten the load on those people so they can have access to what's really so for them?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so I would say that's, first of all, there's a distinction I'm going to draw, which is most coaching is transactional and is kind of like a fish hiring another fish to help it be really good in the ocean. And then a little bit of the coaching profession is life-changing transformational magic. And that's hiring someone like a man to reach into the water and pluck you out and show you, hey, look at all this possibility that's available if you didn't have to be confined to water. And so what we're talking about is basically transformation. The water that person's learned to swim in is, I'm not that smart. I wish people related to me as more smart, blah, 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 all the stuff layered on top of that. And what creates a complete new experience of their life is someone that can see through the water for the person that they actually are, start to reflect that to them, and then invite them not just to talk about it, but to start living their life, here's this word, in alignment with what's true for them. And doing so requires courage because there's a safety that we've learned to hold on to from dumbing ourselves down. And so when we take away that strategy, we're going to be confronted by the very reason we put that together in the first place.
Sure. I want to ask you about mental or behavioral compensatory systems, because this is something that I've noticed coming up time and time again in my own coaching, is that the impulse behind the motivation to become who that person has become has largely been influenced from their deepest wounds. And there's a way in which their behaviors and their thinking have been motivated to prove something to the world. And as they come into that greater sense of wholeness, the compensatory patterns also have to be exposed. And when those compensatory patterns are exposed, there's first sort of, there can be a sense of maybe embarrassment or disgust, or at the very least kind of an acknowledgement of, oh man, I don't want to think about myself in that way anymore. And I don't want to, I don't want to go keep doing that for the rest of my life. And so as there's this greater sense of wholeness that comes in, along with that, there's a whole reconditioning neurologically and hormonally that needs to take place, where a lot of these people, these clients of mine, have been motivated largely by stress, because that stress of negative thinking perpetuates the cycle of, well, I've got something to prove today. I'm going to show up today. Now, they might not wear this on their face. They might think that they've got a good attitude towards life and they've got a smile on their face and they've got good connections, they've got good relationships and so forth. But somewhere deep down, there's still a stress level that is motivating how they're thinking about themselves. And when that begins to disappear, so does also what was motivating them. So they can oftentimes go through this strange period of reorientation where they don't feel as ambitious. And the way I always point that out to them is what's happening is neurologically, they're developing new synaptic connections and neural networks around a sense of wholeness and inspiration versus stress and needing to prove themselves to the world or prove something to the world. And so I'm wondering, you're nodding your head. I see a lot. You see what I'm talking about. I'd love to hear you speak to that transformative process as someone comes into greater wholeness, because I can sense that in you, you're coming mainly from inspiration versus stress as a motivator. And you're coming mainly from wholeness and alignment, to use that word in a specific and accurate way, wholeness and alignment versus from that place to need of ego validation. So talk about that.
Yeah. So the metaphor I like is, which is going to describe the same thing you just described, is like a team playing, we'll say hockey because I'm Canadian. So a team playing a game of hockey in order to not lose it versus a team playing a game of hockey in order to win. Now, when people first, so we could look at this for any, I'm going to use qualities of being because that's my world. So like someone who is generous, we tend to be most afraid existentially of being the opposite of what we are innately. So what that means is someone who's truly like brings the quality of being of generosity tends to be most afraid of being selfish. People like us that are brilliant, the fear we tend to learn is, oh my God, what if people think that I'm stupid? Or what if I am stupid? Or what if I create an experience that I'm stupid? And you could do this for any quality, right? People who bring divinity into the space are afraid of being, I don't know, profane or whatever it is. So we build our life around not being stupid. How do I ensure I'm not stupid? Well, there's some great strategies. One, don't try. Two, dim my intelligence, because then you're never going to think I am that in the first place. And I've failed, but I've done it on my terms. I never really tried. Another one, read books obsessively, blah, 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 blah. So we create all these strategies to play a game in order not to lose. And the game we're playing is our life. What people think when they hear that metaphor is like, oh shit, I'm playing this game of life in order to not lose. So what I need to do is go and start losing. But what that does is it just swings the pendulum to the other side. That's not how you win the Olympics or the Stanley Cup or whatever the thing is. What you do is you aim to win and you be willing to lose in the process. And so that's really the journey back to wholeness is, would I be willing to give my life my all, practice trusting the brilliance I am, and then here's the part that's really confronting, kind of to what you're talking about, Sam. And then am I willing to be with those moments when I'm confronted with the exact thing I'm afraid of, which is looking, feeling, possibly being stupid. And if I can be with that, holy shit, everything changes, because the whole scaffolding I've built to not have to be that thing, it's all unnecessary. It all falls away and dissolves. That's life-changing and healing, very healing.
Well said.
Indeed. Well, that's very, very, very cool stuff, Adam. It's very, very cool. And it flows very easily, not only from your ideas out your mouth, but over here it flows symphonically. You have a space here of speaking to things that I believe anybody interested in upgrading their life, or anybody interested in optimizing or re-empowering or recontextualizing life, will likely gravitate towards what you're saying. Now, when you're so refined, we talked about that, and you're so refined in your voice, in your image, your presentation. What are you not being by being that?
I bet he even smells good too. Sure. Something tells me he even smells good. Yeah, he's wearing some kind of antiperspirant that actually smells good.
Yeah.
So the question is kind of like, what are my current edges? Is that fair?
Extreme. Well, you're so extreme in your capacity to be brilliant, to have a gorgeous presentation, to make sure that your voice is, perfect, and to eat your whole background. You are such a fabulous image. You really, it's hilarious. It becomes hilarious how beautiful your image is. And what I'm really asking you is, can you help us see what is that built on that isn't? What is the not that built that? What is the not being that
Yeah,
you're afraid of
totally.
being? Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to be clear. None of my belief and my own experience, none of this stuff goes away forever. It's like I lap it on a racetrack and then, or a spiral going upwards. And then the next time I step into the next big game, I'm like, oh shit, there's the same flavor of fear, which I'm now going to talk about. So, like my knots, the big ones, first of all, being stupid, a real, what do I call it? Like a perennial fear of mine is that people don't want to come to my party. So if I build a party, then I don't want to invite people because they're going to be like, oh, they're patting me on the head, like, oh, that's cool that you're doing that party, Adam. I'm sure it's going to be a great party. I'm going to go over here and hang out at a better party. So one example of this is we are all a part of a group called Metal, filled with remarkable humans, and many of them are committed to leadership. And I'm very clear that I have some value to offer. And that fear has been showing up. And like, it's not that I'm running and burying my head. I'm noticing it. I'm bringing that to my coach for support, but it's like I'm hesitating to bring all of the value I have to offer right now, in part because I want to not do the opposite of holding back and just be like, you must pay attention to me. I have value for you. But at the same time, the other side of that pendulum is like, well, they don't really want what I have. So that is a common fear. Um, Coupled with it is like a fear of not having the impact that I'm on this planet to have. And so I'll either sort of grab you and shake you to make sure that I have the impact, or fuck it, I'm just not even going to try. Maybe I'll just go get stoned over here and amuse myself with video games. Hey, this is almost as good. And then that leads to like contentment, but not really full open hearted thriving. So that gives you some. I can elaborate more, but I just want to put that into the space first.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. And I love the example. Just want to reflect back to you the example of what I would call empowered vulnerability in that communication, because you spoke vulnerably without ever losing your strength. You're in your strength as you were communicating something vulnerably. And so you just modeled that again, of course, just to Fred's point, there should be like, the coaching version of like Teen Beat magazine. There should be your face should be on the cover of that. Like that's exactly the type of energy that you just modeled, was this strength in vulnerability. And so, want to acknowledge that first. And I'm also curious what the vision for Adam Quiney is moving forward. Do you have an evolutionary process that you are in to move in a certain direction that you do? You have a vision that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, they're kind of so this is still like some of my work as well. So as I share it, it might be a little bit not very well refined. So the first is like kind of the background, what's happening with who Adam B's as a man, which is my work. I notice the path unfolding in front of me is like more and more spiritual, which is kind of like the way a flower this is the image that's been coming to me a lot, is like a flower unfolding, and sometimes it goes that way, and it's like, that's not the way you're meant to grow flower. Let me stake you so you go the right way, letting go of all of my knowing how things are meant to unfold. So one of the ways that shows up is like my business kind of just happens. I don't market. In fact, I'm quite against most marketing, and I'm not actively going after people, and yet people kind of come to me and are like, hey, can we talk, blah blah blah. So a lot of like my work in the background is like opening to spirit and letting go of knowing how any of this is going to unfold anymore, and trusting that there's some divine path that I happen to be on, just like all of us. Can I unfold into that? The other side of things, and this is the tension, I don't know how to resolve, I don't have this sorted out, is like I really want to elevate the coaching profession, the leadership profession, if it's even a profession, and transformation in the world. And the way I want to do that is to be on TV to run events that impact at like 150 people minimum at a time, and to with all of the love and compassion and ability to let people be exactly where they are, help them see that the thing they're relating to is not the thing they think it is, so that they can step into the next level of depth in their own lives, and to continue to doing that in my own.
Love it.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And it seems like you're at a space where that's really right here with you. Like it's all like this is, I get that it sounds like to you, like maybe it's rough edged or not quite refined enough for prime time, but it is. It's right here
Feels that way.
you get to be. That maybe that's what it's supposed to feel like when it's on real time like that.
Totally.
Yeah. If you have
Yeah.
arrived, if you're already that dude, you're going to be a lot less interesting. By the way, you're interesting.
Right. I'm playing a small game, right? If I can already achieve it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Two concepts go into the boxing ring. You create your own reality versus you allow your own reality. How does this match work out in your perception?
I want to answer it like a Zen koan and say you are your own reality.
Go deeper on that. Elaborate.
Sure. So whether I'm creating my reality or I'm allowing my reality is something separate from me in both of those concepts. I allow it or I create it, as opposed to I am my own reality. So I simultaneously can create it, but I'm also creating it from my own reality. And so there's kind of like, people often say like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Both. They came together and sort of like widened out. Like in Taoism, you have the yin and the yang, and they're one and the same, and they're also distinct. So I don't know if I'm getting any closer to answering your question, but this is kind of like how it occurs for me. And this is actually a good example. Yeah. Like that answer is, I don't really know it from my brain. It just came forward from my chest.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. It's another one of those sort of principles that I think gets oftentimes confused and mentalized. I think I just created a word there. Turned into like one of these kind of thought loops that I think a lot of people get caught up in, and again, one of these dogmatic principles that I think deserves examination.
Yeah. Here's something I think this speaks to the same thing we're talking about, which is, so a common, I'm just going to turn my lights back on here, but a common refrain, especially in early days with like coaching, is people will say, it's just your story, which is so unhelpful, but it is kind of just your story. And what happens is we have our beliefs, and those beliefs determine the actions we take. Then the actions that we take has us create a world around us consistent with those actions. And then that world around us reinforces and reinforms our beliefs. So it's a perfect loop. So saying it's just my story on the one hand is true, and on the other hand is false, because I've got all this concrete evidence for why it's not just a story. It's the reality around us. And so that's that's kind of the you are your reality. You both create it and allow it, and can change. All of it is captured in there.
Yeah. And I think that one also sort of bumps into a self-limiting loop, potentially, based on the fact that, yes, conceptually, there's so much truth to that we are, that there is a self-fulfilling feedback loop between what we would consider the internal world and the external world of perception. And yet at the same time, the vast majority of our psyche has been pre-decided by thoughts, feelings, beliefs that we cannot possibly imagine all of them. And it's a continually unfolding experience. So just understanding that in principle does little to actually address those deeper layers oftentimes, because of the fact that so much of it is unconscious. And even the principle itself, even understanding the concept itself, could potentially be used to weaponize ourselves against our own story, so to speak, and then that creates an additional sense of conflict. And then it's like, okay, well, where did this conflict come from? Now I've just created a conflict on top of a conflict when I thought that I was going to try to resolve something,
If only I could figure it out.
Yeah.
Figuring it out. These concepts that are otherwise, I think understood to be mutually exclusive. Like for instance, that there is two characters different from each other, one called creating reality, one called accepting reality, and that that you have some choice to pick which of those two you're going to bring into the ring or you're going to be at any given moment, is sort of trumped over the top by you are your reality, which includes both of those experiences of character, like this, which is really similar to a couple things that you've already pointed to for us, Adam. This, that the early on conversation about, having no agenda and having agenda and being both of those things. Having,
right.
like really, yeah, I want you to be my coaching client, but I am absolutely, and not but, right? Because but is just another version of in order to, in the meantime, I'm going to create a relationship with you because ultimately what I want is for you to give me money for my coaching services. So yeah, I'll play this game for a while until we get to the nitty gritty stuff. And that's what I'll hand you the upsell. Or there's something like, no, I in the enrolling conversation, I can be all of those things. I actually can be all of those things. And that there's no difference. It's not like there's two different ways of being when I'm having agenda, when I'm like, creating versus being like somehow agendaless. These are all forms of the greater being, like all forms of grasping it all as one, as just a life experience. Yeah.
Well, I love that you drew attention to like anytime two things are in conflict, what we tend to go to is like, well, which should I choose? But the transformative breakthrough is often what is the new belief that would transcend these two things being in opposition with each other? And then that's a maddening task, but it is the work at the heart of it. And we never arrive at the one belief like Neo might. There's always the next, it's like a series of concentric circles. Oh, this belief blew me past that tension down there, but now I'm here and I'm playing a bigger game. And now there's a new belief that I'm being called to create. And I'm still stuck in trying to solve between these two things. Damn it. It's so compelling.
It is very compelling.
Yeah.
We're at an hour. I say with guests sometimes we could just go on and on, but I actually think we really could. We could go on and on for hours. And I would like to have you back on the Insanity podcast and maybe even as a little bit more of a staple on the show so that we can really take a look at that. What do you say, Sam? You think Adam meets that criteria to come back on?
I would love it. Adam is a source of a lot of sanity in this insane world. Mm-hmm. And that's the juxtaposition that we are here to explore in this podcast, is that relationship between sanity and insanity. How do we live in an increasingly insane world and stay sane, or stay insane if that's what we choose to do? And I feel that Adam has offered a lot of value in that, riding that edge. And so I really appreciate you, Adam, as always.
Me too, Adam. It's really been a great conversation, and your brilliance, that you so easily, you're just like, it's like, wait, is he allowed to say he's brilliant? Like, are you supposed to be able to say that? Am I allowed to actually own that I'm brilliant? Because my upbringing has it be that no.
Same.
No, I'm not allowed to say that. Even if it's like totally obvious. I'm not, especially if it's.
Oh God, I remember growing up with the aphorism, pride cometh before a fall, and hearing that so many goddamn times.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Pride cometh before a fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much that has informed my own ability to shine, for sure.
Yeah. It's like
you guys warm my heart to just, I would, this has been such a rich conversation for me, and I would love to come back and just stay in the conversation. And I love both of you, and really, I appreciate the acknowledgement of my own brilliance, and I'm present to both of yours, and just like what a rich conversation it makes. So thanks for letting me be a part of it. I'm really honored.
It's our honor for sure, Adam. Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming on. And we'll catch you on the flip side. You can let our listeners know. Adam, how do people find you if they want to catch up with you?
Yeah, so the two easiest places are Facebook, because most people are there, and that's the platform I'm on. So I post a lot of my art there, and what I mean by art is just myself expressed. So my writing, videos, stuff like that.
I'm always looking for your next post. So it's very, very cool stuff, I must say. Keep going.
Thank you. And then the other place is just to go to my website, which is adamquiney.com. There's only one other Adam Quiney in the world, and he's some guy in England. So not that guy, this guy.
All right.
And yeah.
Terrific. So great. Okay, Adam, well, thanks for coming on. Sam, anything else here for us?
Oh, thank you, Adam.
Really beautiful.
Thank you. Love you too.
All right, Adam. I love you too. I love you too, Sam. See you on the next ride.